You are listening to another episode of the Coaster101 Podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, joined this week by John Stevenson in Tennessee. John, how are you?
Doing pretty good.
I'm joined by Shane Joseph up in New England.
How's it going, guys?
And we've got Nick in Ohio. Nick, how are you?
Pretty good.
You know, on this podcast, we've been looking for interaction, and nobody ever emailed us any questions to podcast@coaster101.com. So we turned it into a contest, and, you know, when you bribe people with prizes, people suddenly want to interact with you. But the contest, it was a simple prompt. It was ask us a question, and the four of us are going to answer some of our favorite questions. We'll select our favorite question overall. That winner will get a prize, and you, the listeners, will get to hear us answer some interesting questions. So everybody wins. But John, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to get right into it. John, you go ahead with that first question.
Yeah, so first question comes from @Coaster365 from Twitter, and he asked, who do you think will be the next pro sports team to have a roller coaster themed after it? I know little and have no business talking about sports, so I'm going to pass it off to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I'd like to think I know a lot about sports, so this is good. This is a question, I really, really like this question a lot. And honestly, it's probably going to turn into its own podcast episode and or probably both article on the website. So Coaster365, I appreciate the question. While it is going to end up as its own episode and a article on the website, I'm going to just run through a couple of things here. This answer to this question, it's got to be an NFL team. Those are the highest. It's the biggest fandom. They do the biggest TV numbers, and there's only a certain amount of teams that where a NFL team is where a park where this could work. Either with the park working with the team working with the park, or the park having a demand for a ride where it could link with a team. Some of these teams I think of would be the Chiefs and Worlds of Fun. Worlds of Fun obviously owned by Cedar Fair, but was opened by Lamar Hunt, who was the owner of the Chiefs. It could work with the Carolina Panthers at Carowinds because the Panthers are building a new practice complex just south of Carowinds, and their stadium is just north of Carowinds, and both Carowinds and the Panthers have that two states, one team, where the Carolinas come together. It's a fun tie-in. California's Great America could do a Gold Striker tie-in, even a soft retheme with the 49ers. And then, teams like the Patriots, they have a really passionate fan base, and Lake Compounds is owned by the same park group as Kennywood, who just did Steel Curtain. So it could be a very good Patriots-themed area. And I don't know if this park would ever go for it, but some of the most passionate fans in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers and their local park, Bay Beach. I don't know. Obviously, Bay Beach has Zip and Pippin, but I don't know if they're ready to do a level of involvement that would necessitate an entire theme park land. Our next question is another one from Twitter. It comes from Jonathan, who's at AKA Jonatomp. He wants to know, what's the closest experience you've had to the thrills of a roller coaster? The caveat being there's no amusement park rides allowed in this question. And John, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, so I thought for a while on this one, and I think one of the more unusual ones, at first I thought airplane turbulence, but I think I'm going to go with the Sears Tower, Willis Tower, Skydeck in Chicago, and that's one of the essentially glass boxes that juts out from the top of the tower. And ironically, I have a pretty bad fear of heights, and so going out on in that glass box for the first time was very unnerving, unsettling, and definitely got my adrenaline pumping.
Shane, what about you?
Well, I have also actually been to the Willis Tower Skydeck, which was really cool. I was not as thrilled with it. I just thought it was cool because I'm not personally afraid of heights. I was with a fairly big group, and we did do a few jumps on there, which was a little terrifying. But other than that, that was fun. But I would say, apart from that, some of the most thrilling things I've done, zip lining was really fun. Not necessarily scary, but definitely kind of an adrenaline thing that, especially because you're out in the open, which I really like. And depending on where you go, you can some of those go pretty fast. Parasailing I've also done in Florida, which was really cool. That was definitely more the adrenaline kind of thing when you're on the boat and they're about to send you, that's kind of a heart pumping moment because, you get pulled back fairly quickly, which I thought was really cool. Also, the ropes course at American Dream, which is maybe kind of cheating because it's technically at an amusement park. It's not a ride, though. That is probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. I don't know why I was so terrified. Again, I'm not afraid of heights, but you're attached, you wear a vest and it attaches to a bar above your head that you can kind of move around to all these different levels on. And there's this point where you're walking on this small beam and you're walking out with nothing under you over the 150 feet down or whatever it is, which is pretty terrifying. There's a rolling like log in there too, which I had a hard time getting across. So those are probably the most thrilling experiences. Also, some of the virtual reality places have been really cool. I've done the Ghostbusters one in New York, which is awesome. There's some really cool effects in there. There's a scene where you're walking on this narrow thing where it looks like you're above the New York City and you can look down into the streets and you feel the wind. Some of those kind of things I think are a really great way to kind of get the thrill of an amusement park without actually going.
Shane, can I go back to that ropes course for a second?
Yes.
Did you have any idea what Legends of the Hidden Temple was before you?
I actually did not. I recognized the guy out front, the Easter Island head looking guy. I don't know anything about him, but I've seen it before.
Okay, Shane, this is the mark of the age joke that I make every episode, so I had to do it. Nick, what about you? What's your biggest roller coaster thrill, but not an amusement ride?
Yeah, roller coasters are thrilling, but it's a controlled thrill. You're very safe. So I was trying to think of something like what's something I've done that's where you're not certain. There's that unexpected quality where something unexpected might happen. So one of those was probably when we were on a Disney cruise. We were snorkeling in the ocean in the Bahamas. And so you'd just be like swimming along, and then you'd look over, and all of a sudden there'd be a stingray like a couple feet away from you. So that was pretty thrilling and fun, and things like that, like hiking in the Smoky Mountains, in a mountain, and then seeing a black bear, like 20 feet away from you, is pretty thrilling.
Yeah, seeing a bear, I think that would be any level of like unexpected thrills.
Oh yeah,
you have no idea what those guys are going to do. But Nick, you've got the next question.
Yep. Next up, we have a question from Celebration Sharon. If you could take a 4-week road trip across the United States, which theme parks would you go to? And we also received another similar question from @PJ Van B. How would you plan the perfect coaster road trip?
I think that the easiest way to do this, and that's another, I love Sharon's question. A 4-week road trip is something that I've actually planned several times, never actually executed the plan because money is a thing and like I have to work and all sorts of stuff like that. But planning the perfect road trip, and I am a planner, but you've got to budget accordingly and you've got to map out your stops in advance, and you have to take into account that at the end of the day, even though you're just like walking around a theme park, you may be tired and you can't drive through the night. And I say that just as, a 30-year-old, and like, I know there are young guys out there. I know that drive through the night, they'll sleep 6 guys to a room in a Motel 6 or whatever it is they do. But I personally can't do that. But my advice is decide where you want to go, figure out if there's any non-park trips that you want to make that are on the journey, but plan a budget and utilize websites like Priceline, hotels.com to get your hotel rooms. Even if you just have a location of where you want to stay and you don't necessarily need the room, because most of these places you should be able to get a room night of at a deeply discounted. The other piece of advice I would have would be buying season passes. If you can make a road trip work, I know there's obviously Six Flags season passes will get you in everywhere. Cedar Fair Platinum Pass, a Busch SeaWorld Platinum Pass will get you into all these parks. Can save on admission costs, save on parking costs. It's a good money saver along the way.
So I am, full disclosure, not a huge fan of sitting in cars for any significant lengths of time. I really try to keep my road trips under 4 hours. So what I tend to do actually is kind of, fly or drive to a place where there are a cluster of parks. So I've done LA the first time I went to LA and just kind of set up home base near LAX, and then just went out to all the parks around there. We were planning on doing that. The whole Coaster101 team was planning on doing that this summer, this past May at in San Antonio. So you could hit Six Flags Fiesta Texas, SeaWorld, not too far of a drive from Six Flags over Texas, and so that's really what kind of my method of attack. But I think efficiency is key. Whatever method, whatever transportation method of transportation you take, you want to be as efficient as possible so you can spend the most time at the parks. And then efficiency and budgeting as well. I think those are what goes into planning a perfect coaster road trip, or just a coaster trip in general.
Shane, what about you?
I had kind of a similar approach. I would actually start up near where I am in New England, kind of go down the East Coast, hit those, Virginia, Pennsylvania parks, then go over to Tennessee, and then end near San Antonio in Texas. I think that would be a good way to go. There's a few, like you're saying, if you have the season pass, I know there's at least 2 or 3 Six Flags parks along that route. Same thing with Cedar Fair parks. You can hit a bunch of those. And then Texas, obviously there's 2 Six Flags and a SeaWorld there too. So I think that would be a fairly reasonable trip if you had both of those season pass and had that endurance that you wanted to go through. I mean, that would be a lot. That would be like 15 plus parks probably if you wanted to, if you were a completionist, you wanted to get all of them. So I would say that would be my ideal road trip.
Got it. When you're doing all that driving, be sure to queue up a wonderful podcast, much like the Coaster101 Podcast, which you're currently listening to right now.
Yes, please do. All right, our next question comes from Travis_Irwin. And they ask, how can some coasters operate in 30-degree weather perfectly fine one year, but the next year it can barely operate in 40-degree weather? I feel like Travis was maybe like referencing a specific coaster. This sounds like very from the heart. But Nick, how can a coaster operate one year fine in cold weather and then not operate the next year?
Yeah, it sounds like he's talking about some kind of a very specific situation. So without knowing the exact park or coaster manufacturer, it's difficult to answer. But my guess is it could be to do with the wheels. Because most roller coasters will use 2 different types of wheels. They'll have one that have a harder material and one with a softer material. And so they'll change these out as the seasons change. So at the beginning of the season, maybe they would use a harder wheel and then maybe a mixture. And then as the weather gets warmer, go to some of the softer wheels. And then as the weather gets colder again, change back to the harder ones. So maybe in a case like this, it just could be maybe they ran out of one type of the wheels, like possibly due to budget, or maybe there was a supplier issue, which would make sense if this was something that happened during 2020.
That's spoken like a true engineer. I love that answer.
Or I could be completely wrong. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think we're presenting all these answers as facts, except you should listen to the Coaster101 Podcast on a long road trip. That's the only one that's been a fact so far. Next question is Alex Yukon 57 wants to know, in what year will Cedar Fair cave and buy another Intamin? And if I can answer this one, I feel like it's not just Intamins at Cedar Fair, but Intamins in the U.S. are kind of they're just a unique thing. And if you count Pantheon and Velocicoaster, which are opening this year at Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Universal Orlando, respectively, there's only been 10 Intamins to open in the United States since Intimidator 305, which was Cedar Fair's last Intamin. There's a little bit of a resurgence given the success of Hagrid and then hopefully Velocicoaster and Pantheon. A little bit of a resurgence in the U.S. right now. So hopefully very soon. If I had to guess, let me just make a guess because, again, it's opinion, not facts. 2023.
So I would love to see Kings Island open an Intamin, especially because they have a huge plot of land that just opened after they removed Vortex. And so obviously they just opened Orion this year, so 2020. So it'll probably be several years before they start looking at their next large-scale coaster. But I would say hopefully by 2025, I think Kings Island would be deserving of a Intamin-sized new coaster.
That Vortex plot of land, it's begging for something right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So next we have a question from Blarb Tiger at R Interventions. So what's the coaster, ride, or area that you felt has the most untapped potential? Something that could have been far better than what it turned out to actually be. Nick, what do you think?
I would say actually almost like name any giga coaster that's out there. So even though they're 300 feet plus tall, I wish they were all longer by one or two elements. Because you take a roller coaster I love, like the Voyage. If you count all the individual elements, it probably has 20 to 30 elements. Whereas giga coasters, most of them I think have maybe 7 to 10 elements, and elements being like an airtime hill, an overbank turn, that kind of thing. Specifically, I'm thinking of like Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. It's a great ride, but the brake run is like 100 feet in the air. Like, think about what they could have done with all that potential energy. You could have had a longer ride with a couple more elements. It would have taken a good ride and turned it into something amazing.
Yeah, I agree a lot with that, Nick, with the exception of Fury 325, which is perfect in every way.
Yeah, that's the best out of the Giga coasters.
My answer to this question is Toy Story Land at Hollywood Studios. And the land it's visually stunning. And obviously in the concept art, there were things that were in the concept art that did not make it to the final product. Probably fell victim to budget cuts, unfortunately. Slinky Dog, very fun family coaster. The alien swirling saucers, I guess it's a people eater. I mean, it's nothing more than a giant whip, I feel like. And then Toy Story Mania, I love, but it's not like it's part of the land, but all they did was build a new entrance to an existing attraction. I think it could have stood, one or two more attractions in the land. I'm thinking, one of those Entenmann RC racer coasters would be really cool. I know it's Disney, so it's, not necessarily a people eater. But if you put something else there, another family ride, another restaurant, another, a shopping outlet, if you could buy something from the Green Army men who have set up shop in Andy's backyard, I think it would be a better land, and I think it would be able to spread out people more.
So I actually picked two, and they kind of are in the same vicinity, so to speak, of what Nick said about the Giga coasters, and those are Goliath at Six Flags Great America and Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. Goliath, which opened in 2014, was really, I mean, if you're familiar with that park, it was crammed into a very, very small plot of land. And so I think part of the issue there was just a pure limited amount of space. But there's just so much momentum with that coaster as it enters the brake run that it's really interesting to think what could have been done if they were able to find some room. And I'm sure part of it was budget. Same with Tennessee Tornado. I've written about Tennessee Tornado a couple times with some on the site. They were somewhat limited in space just because you're having to deal with the terrain. But Arrow, if they had more money and more space, they could have built more. And that's another coaster that has a lot of speed as it enters that brake run. Now, I will say I would rather a coaster, really be having that pacing and that energy all the way to the end rather than kind of just dying out halfway through. But it is exciting to think about what could have been with more money or more space.
I agree. The two that came to mind for me immediately were Dino-Land at Animal Kingdom and the Lost Continent at Islands of Adventure at Universal. Dino-Land, I think, is already on its way out. We just saw them take out Primeval Whirl. So something is hopefully being planned to go in there anyway. I've said before, I think Black Panther would be perfect for that area, or Indiana Jones with the new movie coming out that could tie that in. Whatever they do, I hope they don't get rid of the actual dinosaur ride, because I think that's one of the best rides at Disney, but the land for sure needs a revamp. Same with the Lost Continent at Islands of Adventure. It's cool to have a original story there, but I don't really even know what it is, which is unfortunate. And I think that a lot of the general public certainly wouldn't know just walking through there. I mean, you can see the architecture is cool, but other than that, there's really no reason at this point to go into that land. And I think that would be the perfect expansion for more Harry Potter stuff, which we know is a huge draw for Universal. So those would be my answers to the most untapped potential that I see right now at the parks.
Shane, you're really harping on that Black Panther and Dino Land concept. I know that was your Coaster Radio contest that Neil Patrick Harris didn't choose to win their real design contest. So I love the idea, and
yeah, I'm sticking to it. I think it'd be perfect.
And even if you mentioned an Indiana Jones takeover of Dino Land, I mean, the story that the dinosaur ride and the Indiana Jones adventure on the West Coast are basically the same ride. So
yeah, exactly.
It's a quick reskin, and let's get it going.
Yep, agreed.
Nick, what's the next question?
All right, our next question, it's a good one, is from Sean Maurer. If you could work high up for any park to make the biggest impact that you could to improve the overall experience, what park would it be and what would you do? Andrew?
So if I got in a position of power at any park, really, one of the main things I would do would be to constantly be in the park, physically walking around, seeing what the guests are seeing, talking to guests, getting feedback in real time. And I use this example because I've seen Jerry Helms, he's been at Carowinds forever, and he's their vice president of operations. I've read stories about Jerry, how he will burn through like 3 or 4 pairs of shoes in a season because he walks so many miles in a day. And I've always seen Jerry around the park. He's always talking to guests. He's always trying to come up with what the next big thing is. And I mean, something as simple as, the expansion of a parking lot so guests can get to the gate faster. I know Carowinds has done that recently. But it all came from guest feedback. So by being in the park, seeing what the guests see and seeing their experiences, I think that's the best way to do it at literally any park. That and having a big stack of line skips or quick queues or whatever the respective park calls it in my pocket, just kind of handing them out at random, not necessarily in you're complaining, here, let me give you this, but more of the hotel term is like a surprise and delight. And, you come up to a family and say, hey, how's your day going? I'm so-and-so. Why don't you just take go to the front of the line on me? I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. My pick would be, I would love to work at Universal, specifically like when there's something like Epic Universe going on, where it's just this huge blue sky project where pretty much anything goes. You have kind of unlimited potential and so many ideas that you can do. And also I love like all the Universal movies, Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, Fast and Furious. Those are some of my favorites. So to kind of be able to be given the blank slate and sort of design these lands just from the ground up and from your imagination, I think would be a really great place to be high up in the company. Our next question comes from Nathan at A Coaster Story. And he says, as a New Englander, I have to ask this. As he says, what is the single most important thing the Falcons have to do to beat the Patriots?
We did say we would answer any question that was asked of us. My answer to this question is all the Falcons have to do is score more points than the Patriots and also never go up to 28-3 ever again. And then maybe they got a shot. Next question is from Talhat786. And they want to know, will another park attempt to build a bigger roller coaster than Falcon's Flight at the new Six Flags in Saudi Arabia?
Okay, my answer to this is very simple. Let's see if Falcon's Flight actually happens first. Google Polar Coaster in Orlando, and then get back to me.
That works. I mean, Nick, John, you guys, what do you think? Is this Six Flags project in Saudi Arabia? Are they actually going to have the 200 mile per hour, 500 feet tall, 47 loops or whatever this thing has? I know there's a great article that Shane wrote on the site that talks about the statistics, but what do you guys think?
After the past year, there is absolutely nothing in this world that is off the table. So I would say it is completely plausible that we see something even bigger down the road.
Yeah, it seems like they have the money. It's just, I guess, from the engineering standpoint, it goes back to the wheels again. Are the wheels going to be able to handle these high speeds? Like, are they just going to burn through them so fast that, like, this thing's going to cost a ton of money to operate? It's going to take twice as many inspectors and things like that.
We'll see what happens. I want to say I have faith. I have no reason to believe it otherwise, or disbelieve it otherwise. Next question is from KP Coasters on Instagram. They want to know what coaster scares you the most. And Nick, I'll go back to you.
Well, I've been on so many roller coasters at this point that like they don't really scare me anymore. Like even, like I was standing in line for Orion this summer, which has a 300-foot drop, and like my heart rate or pulse isn't, going up at all, even as we're climbing the lift, because I'm just used to the height and speed. So like, the height and speed don't scare me anymore. But what does, maybe it's a little irrational, but I guess I have a fear of cables. So anything with a cable. So any of those launch coasters that use a cable, like Top Thrill Dragster, for example, at Cedar Point. So it's just that fear of what if the cable, as small as a chance as it is, what if the cable were to snap mid-launch? Like that's going to be a bad situation. So even though roller coasters are totally safe and your chance of getting hurt or an accident happening is very, very small, it's still like that's what I'm thinking about during the launch is like, oh, what if the cable snaps and just debris goes flying everywhere?
Well, now that Nick's given us nightmares, John, what coaster scares you the most?
So I would say that Top Thrill Dragster, I'm right there with you, Nick. I actually rode it for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was with Kyle, who also writes for the site, and we were getting ready to launch. So my hands are clammy on any given day, and they were extra clammy waiting for that launch. And it actually, in true Top Thrill Dragster fashion, went down temporarily. So they pulled us back to the station. So just the anticipation and the anxiety from that was pretty intense. But I would actually say since then, one of the coaster that scared me or intimidated me the most was Max Force at Six Flags Great America. That acceleration 0 to 78 in under 2 seconds was unlike anything I think even surpassed Top Thrill, and just that intensity and not really knowing what that would feel like. And then you've got the boom of the compressed air. So I think that took the cake. So, but I'm very excited about whichever coaster will be the one that scares me the most next.
Okay, so for me, I would say probably X2, because kind of like Nick said, I've been on a lot of different kinds of coasters, so I kind of know what to expect from a lot of them. You can kind of look at it and picture in your head how they're going to feel. But X2 was something totally out of left field for me. I've been on those free spins, but they're not really the same as X2. So I was pretty terrified. And that was also our first ride of the day when we went to the park. So I knew I had to, get that over with, and it ended up being one of my favorite coasters, but standing in line and waiting for it was pretty terrifying. Same thing. Okay, this is a weird answer, but the Super Loops, I will not go on them because I don't like being held upside down. I'll do all these other, whatever Giga coasters, drop towers. I can do those, but I don't know what it is about a Super Loop. I can't do it. Also, just remembered this one, Six Flags Magic Mountain. Also, waiting in line for Superman Escape from Krypton, that launch coaster. I wasn't really, afraid at all because I'd kind of done some similar things. But when you're waiting in line, you don't see the launch track because it's behind doors. So you just have to stand there and wait, and you can just hear it going, and it sounds so menacing. It's so loud because it's echoing off of everything when you're standing in the line. So that was one where I didn't feel anything getting in line, but then all the anticipation of waiting and hearing it and not being able to see, that was pretty scary for me too.
Yeah, I'm with you on those Super Loops. I rode one at the North Carolina State Fair when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And not only do I not ride anything at the fair, I have not been back to the fair except for like once or twice in the last 18 years.
Yeah. Anything at a fair, I'm always afraid I'm going to find like a bolt under my seat or something, and then that'll be it.
Yeah. And then another one for me that came to mind when I went to Conneaut Lake Park in Pennsylvania. That's a park that's constantly open and closed, but they've got the historic Blue Streak roller coaster. And when I was going to ride it, they had a delay because like the cushions came loose from the trains, and you're like in this old roller coaster, like going up the lift hill in a bathtub. You feel like every creak and every groan in the boards, and it's just like, Well, I know it's been safe for 70 years, so how about 70 years and another day? So yeah, that was pretty terrifying, and I'm glad I did it. It was a very fun ride, but just seeing it and being like, yeah, you can't ride it right now. Sorry, the cushions fell off. Never something you want to hear. Nick, what's our next question?
All right, next up from at AD Higgs 21. What's your favorite RMC coaster? And I'm going to say here that my favorite would probably have been Lightning Rod had I gotten to ride it. No, I'm not bitter about that at all. But no, I'll just quickly answer. Mine's probably Steel Vengeance followed by Storm Chaser. How about you, Andrew?
Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. And I say this, Storm Chaser was very good. New Texas Giant, very good. Goliath at Six Flags Great America, very good. Twisted Timbers is great because it's 4 hours for me and I can go up over a weekend and ride it. And that barrel roll drop is great. The stall inversion on the kind of that back curve is wonderful. And I love the theming that's around that ride with the Hanover Hill Orchard and the tree, and I think back to that teaser campaign, and there's just so much, there's sentimental value for Twisted Timbers with me, and I'm also, kind of big mad that when we went to Coaster Mania in 2017, 2018, whenever it was, that I got walked off Steel Vengeance for being too large, so I just have this personal vendetta against Steel Vengeance, and really I just need to lose some weight and go back up there and ride it. John, as our resident Tennessean, are we going to get a surprise answer from you here?
Absolutely not. Lightning Rod. As troublesome as it is, I love it, love it, love it. Can't wait to see it reopen in 2021 with some new track. But the quad down, the innovation of the world's first launched wooden coaster, the pitch black night rides, the pacing, the terrain, I mean, just the whole package. So lots of great RMCs to choose from, but Lightning Rod will, I think, always be my number one.
And Shane?
So I've only been on two, Wicked Cyclone and Twisted Colossus. Both of them are some of my favorite coasters. I love them. I'm going to go with Twisted Colossus, though, just because the sheer size of it's really great as you're coming into the park. You can see it. Obviously, it's got the dueling aspect if you can time it out right. I didn't get any dueling rides on it, but even without it, it's a fantastic coaster. Some of the coolest elements I've ever been on. And it was a highly anticipated coaster for me for a while. So it was really great to get out there and finally get on it.
Got it. Next question. It's another twofer. I got two similar questions here. One from Cedar Flags, who says, if you were to ride one defunct roller coaster, what would it be? And then Griffin_Door wants to know if you could bring back any demolished coaster, which would it be? Which is basically the same question. But Nick, what do you think here?
I'll answer with two. So the first one is one I actually did get to ride, was the Big Bad Wolf Aero Suspended Coaster at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Just a classic ride, Aero Suspended Coaster, so much fun. So then the other one was one that I didn't actually get to ride, which was Eagle Fortress, which is basically like the Korean version of Big Bad Wolf. It was actually the second to last Aero Suspended roller coaster ever built. And if you've never heard of this ride, you got to stop what you're doing right now and go watch a POV of this thing on YouTube. It just looks crazy. It was built on the side of a mountain. It had through a forest that was so dense that the whole ride is kind of like going through a tunnel of trees. And just the swinging motion just looks insane, going side to side, 90 degrees. It looks like a really awesome ride. I wish I really could have gotten a chance to ride it.
Shane, what about you?
For me, I would say Volcano, the blast coaster. I never got to ride it, but I love those Intamin suspended, the shuttle coasters, launch coasters. Those are so much fun, and they're a tiny, tiny footprint. They don't do that much, so I would love to see what that was like in a full-fledged layout.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And John, what about you?
I would say Big Bad Wolf as well. I was there as a kid and was at that time scared of roller coasters, so I did not ride it. I will never forgive myself. Second would be Dueling Dragons, actual Dueling Dragons. That I would just love to see that again. As great as its replacement is, I just think it was a masterpiece and was taken from us too soon.
I agree with all of these. I will add Thunder Road at Carowinds to the list. Specifically during the Paramount era when the left side, I believe, raced backwards. That was it was a unique feeling that you can't really get anymore. Another next two questions. Celebration Sharon wants to know what new coaster you're looking forward to most opening in 2021. And Ella G. Taylor is going to, specify just two of these. She wants to know Velocicoaster or Pantheon. But John, of the new coasters opening in 2021, and I know we talked about it on the podcast last week, I believe, at this point. What is your most looking forward to 2021 coaster?
Velocicoaster, absolutely. So that answers both questions. But I love the Jurassic Park franchise, have since I was a little kid. The theming is incredible. I've been following it very closely since construction began. I'm just fascinated with how they fit this very large coaster into what I thought was a very small plot of land. So very excited for Pantheon as well, but I am just really hoping I can find a way to get down to Florida for Velocicoaster this year.
And Nick, what about you?
Do I have to choose? Because they both look amazing. Like the theming on Velocicoaster, I think is going to help set it apart. Pantheon, I'm most looking forward to that giant outward bank turn element. There's a similar one on Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, and this one just looks even crazier than that. So I'll take either one of them. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but
that's okay. And Shane?
Well, I wrote, okay, so specifically for Velocicoaster and Pantheon, I don't like to judge coasters without having ridden them. But if we're answering the question, I would say Velocicoaster as well, because I love the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise is awesome. Pantheon is probably, it's a little closer to me, so maybe a little bit more accessible, but I just think Velocicoaster is going to be awesome. I think it's the perfect addition for Universal. I just hope they keep the theming of the river adventure. Don't change that over.
Okay, then the next question comes from at ECS Official. Best park food, no snacks.
Well, we did talk about this briefly. If you go back into the Coaster101 archive or the Coaster101 podcast archives, we did do an episode, our theme park food Mount Rushmore, which you can find either in the podcast feed or send a quick text to the text being food to 419-742-2101. But my favorite regular meal, and I specify regular meal being that it's available year round, just because all these parks with their food festivals, they have some great limited time menu items. But I love the marinated beef from Marco Polo's Marketplace at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. It's served with roasted potatoes and roasted vegetables and pita and tzatziki sauce, and it's something you eat in a theme park, presumably with a full view of a roller coaster like Pantheon in 2021. And you're just like, how am I at a theme park eating this food?
Yeah, so this answer is kind of cheating, but I am a strong believer that Dollywood's world famous cinnamon bread is the greatest food ever created, and it can absolutely be a meal if you eat a whole loaf. And I am absolutely speaking from experience. And so I think if almost anything, I would choose to have Dollywood cinnamon bread. And I actually just thought what would be really cool is to use Dollywood cinnamon bread to make a sandwich. So I am going to go plan that for when the park reopens. So thank you for that idea.
Absolutely.
I agree. I cannot wait to try that cinnamon bread. The next question comes from Theater AR, who asks, what is your favorite photo you've ever taken and why? Andrew, kick us off.
Yeah. So back in winter of 2014, so this is going way back, but it was when Fury 325 was under construction. I'm actually looking at this picture on my wall in my office right now, but we were there the day that the coaster was topped off. I got to get right up on it, get a lot of pictures, and it was like one of my first ever media events while riding for Coaster101. But because the coaster was under construction, now there is a fence in that location that's like a lockout, tag-out fence. But when that picture was taken, the fence didn't exist yet. So I was able to literally get right up on the track. I put my camera on the track, shooting up vertically at the drop. I've got, like I said, a big canvas, like a 20 by 30 canvas on my wall of this photo. And it's, for a variety of reasons, it's my favorite coaster. It was the first event I really covered for Coaster101. It's an angle that very few people have, and we'll post this in the show notes and the article on the website. But it is I love this picture, and I plan to take it with me wherever I go. If I leave this office, it's coming with me.
So I'll go next. My favorite was actually taken over the summer. After I got back from a trip to Kentucky Kingdom, I was going through my photos and I noticed something in the air from taken of one of the several airtime hills of Lightning Run, the Chance Hyper GTX coaster. And it was a face mask that had flown off of a rider's face. And I think that really illustrates very well the insane ejector air that you find on that coaster. And while I'm on the topic of that, why are there not more of these in the US or the world? It's a crime. These are amazing little coasters and we need more of them. So rest in peace to that face mask. I hope the rider had a backup. Good idea, because I know we'll be wearing face masks this year when we go to the parks. So definitely always take 1 or 2 or 3 extras.
Yeah, and mine was also at Kentucky Kingdom as well. So if you're not familiar with that park, the lift hill of Storm Chaser actually lines up with the flight path of the airplanes flying into the runway of the nearby airport there. So you can get some pretty good shots of airplanes coming in really low that look like you get the right angle, looks like they're going to like crash into the coaster. And we were also there for media day, so I got to put my GoPro on the coaster. So that was a pretty cool moment as well.
Yeah, it's cool. My favorite is actually not of a coaster. It's of Hogwarts Castle at Universal Studios Hollywood. I went to this park many times in the first 2 months of this year. And Forbidden Journey, Harry Potter and Forbidden Journey is my favorite theme park attraction ever. So being back at a Universal park and being able to ride it again was great. And I got a few really awesome pictures of their castle. If you've ever been to the parks or seen a picture, you know that they're kind of elevated. So as you're walking up, you can get some really awesome angles of the castle against the sky, especially at night. So I got a few of those that I really, really like.
All right. And next question is from @L.Auden14. If you built a theme park, what would your chief centerpiece attraction be?
For me, I would just build a badass giant GCI wooden coaster in the center of the park. You can look at it from every angle. I'm thinking like roller coaster like Kentucky Rumbler at Beach Bend, which in and of itself is a centerpiece attraction. What is the equivalent to a county fair in rural Kentucky? But I would just have this mega GCI, Great Coasters International Twister coaster, and it would be a killer. That's what I would do. I know it's not necessarily the most conventional pick, but there's something special about seeing just a whole mess of timber and wood and not even being able to tell where the train goes at any given time.
Yep, I agree. Yep. But I would actually, for a centerpiece, I think for most parks, a centerpiece is going to be a hypercoaster, traditional, preferably a B&M, maybe an Intamin. But I think that's something that is timeless and is always going to be, unless you get to a park, like Cedar Point that has so many coasters. I think a hyper will be a centerpiece attraction for most parks. So that's what I'd go with.
So my pick would be a highly themed dark ride, preferably with some new advanced technology, like we see something like Runaway Railway, where it's the projection mapping, or Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, where it's the oceaneering vehicles with the practical and digital mix of sets. I just think a dark ride can pretty much be enjoyed by anyone. And I think that it's such a just classic ride that it can be re-upped and redone with so many new technologies that it should be a staple in every park. So if I was building a park, I would make sure to have a really high-tech, highly themed dark ride.
All right. So next we have Tech Ed chart, I believe. What coaster lift or launch sound is your favorite? Andrew, what do you think?
This is not necessarily specifically a roller coaster related sound, but when you're on Rock and Roller Coaster at Disney's Hollywood Studios, you got the launch and you have like Steven Tyler like yelling into your ear through the onboard speakers. That's a really good one. And I also love, it's not necessarily a lift or a launch, but I just love a B&M roar. Hulk comes to mind. You kind of have the Hulk roar when it comes out of the tunnel and then does that barrel roll before diving over the pathway. But that's what I'm going to pick. Shane, what do you think?
I would say any RMC lift tends to be very, very loud. Steel Vengeance specifically, I know, has this, but I love that you can hear the kind of clicking and clacking of the chain, whether you're on it or in line. It's pretty noticeable if you're anywhere around the coaster. So I love those. And LSM launches are great. I know Magic Mountain, if you're anywhere near the vicinity of Superman when it launches, you're going to need a hearing check. So I love any loud launch that you can hear throughout the park. It's a very menacing sound and it sets up what's about to happen. So both of those, I think, are a great staple of coaster sounds.
Hangtime Thrills wants to know who has the highest coaster count out of you guys. And I'm just going to answer me. And that's the answer.
No further discussion needed.
No further discussion. 240. John, you're what? 239, 238, something like that?
Yeah, 239. So watch out.
I'm at 223.
Shane, what about you?
I'll just say I'm on my way to 100.
Love it.
That's where we'll leave it.
Perfect. And we've got one more question on this week's podcast, and it's from Dale, who's on Twitter at LilDice504. He's asking when we're going to have our first listener event at a park. And Dale, you clearly don't know us because we're not that big of a deal. It's not like we're going to sign autographs or anything. But, if we happen to be at a park, we'll post about it on social media. We'll give you guys a heads up that we're going to be there. If we're there, odds are we will probably have on some sort of Coaster 101 shirt or hat or have a Coaster 101 backpack. And, odds are on top of that, we'll probably have some sort of Coaster 101 swag, be it keychains or stickers or bracelets or buttons or anything really that we can get into a park through a metal detector and they're not like, why do you have this bag of buttons? So if you see us in a park, come say hello, come grab a ride or grab a drink with us. A drink with John, Nick, and I, Shane, not quite, but
by the time I get to another park, probably.
There you go. But when we were at Six Flags Great America last year, we posted a group photo, and one of the comments on that was, looks like a pretty normal group of guys, which is weird to find in the coaster community. So I'd like to think we're pretty approachable and normal. So if you see us at a park, say hello. As far as an actual listener event, though, certainly no plans yet. Most parks, when they want you to do events, they want to have like a guaranteed number of people. And in order to have a listener event at a park, we would have to get our numbers up. So Dale and everybody else listening to this podcast, tell your friends. And then maybe we can have an event at a park. And I know we talked about this before the show, so we didn't really have to debate. But we did promise a prize thanks to coaster photographer Bo Corbin and also Coaster 101's Larry Treese. We've promised some coaster prints, one of Fury 325 at sunset and one of a bird flying over the lake, flying over Lake Erie at Cedar Point. And the question that's going to win this week is Jonathan Thompson's question. It was kind of the most thought-provoking. It was the question that was, what experience is closest to the thrill of a roller coaster but not actually a thrill ride? So, Jonathan, if you're listening, we will be in touch. We'll get you your prize shipped out soon. But that will do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. Thanks to everybody who submitted questions. We love this. We didn't get to all of them. We'll do this again in the future. But we really appreciate it. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on social media. We're at Coaster 101 everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you can find social media, we're there, and that's our handle. If you've got any comments, concerns, fan mail, hate mail, or more questions, feel free to send us an email, podcast@coaster101.com. Be sure to like, rate, subscribe, review. Again, as I said earlier, if you want to have this listener event, you have to tell your friends to listen to this podcast, because nobody's going to take us seriously otherwise. Thanks, as always, to Justin Mabry of JA Music Design for our theme music. That's it for this week, and we will talk to you all again soon. See ya.